I hope you've been well and staying safe. Now, in this edition, I thought I would answer a couple of questions around business, lifestyle, and motherhood. I know that from the outside, for a lot of people, it can seem like it's very easy to kind of juggle lots of different things, especially when it looks like things are going really well and that kind of thing. So people often ask, how do you do it? So I've got a couple of questions here that I thought I would answer that will give you a bit of an insight into how I run my life, basically. So the first question is, what's the best business advice you have ever received? I think the best business advice, or some of the strongest business advice I've ever received, include things like, you don't need an office. Now, when I first started my business, I was like, proper businesses have offices. So I went and invested and spent a lot of money on offices rather than looking at strategy and how to make sure that I had a sustainable business and clients. And it just ended up meaning that it became a bit of a financial burden. So I think that was a good piece of advice, but I'm also one of those people that's a little bit stubborn and I like to learn things for myself. So I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to have seen that actually it doesn't say anything, especially in today's world now where, you can work from anywhere and people accept that. So I think that's one of the strongest pieces of advice. The other thing is not to rush to get employees. So that doesn't mean don't rush to get a team. It just means that whole process of payroll and pensions, I think that comes when your business is at a certain point where you're like, actually, we can see that over a long period of time, actually, we know that we're going to have a regular source of income in. I've always done well by having virtual assistants, by working with contractors where everyone's responsible for their own national insurance and tax and that kind of thing. And I think there's also a difference in the kind of appetite for work as well. So one, from a process point of view, it's like, okay, it's less work. But two, I think, and this is not a slight on employees, but I think when you're employing people, they know that whatever happens, whatever level of effort they put in, what level of output they give you, they are going to be employed by you and they're going to get a salary at the end of the month. Whereas with a contractor, there's a different level of urgency. And I think there is a level of commitment because it's focused on their reputation as contractors rather than them being a kind of cog in the wheel for an organisation. So I think that's another piece of advice that I've kind of thought interesting, which is build a team, but don't necessarily build, you don't necessarily have to hire lots of employees. So that's one. What inspired you to start your first business? So my business, TGRG, is a PR, marcoms and talent management agency, but it's not my first business. It's actually my second. So my first business was an agency called Afrobase, which was providing marketing for black businesses. And I started that business because I felt like a lot of black businesses didn't necessarily have access to the appropriate marketing infrastructure. It was just a case of, we'll just do whatever and get it out, which has its place. But sometimes when you're competing in a wider market, you have to make sure that you have the ability to be able to compete on par. Because customers aren't always forgiving. What they see in the first 20 seconds could determine whether or not they're going to stay and spend their money with you. But really what's inspired me to get into business is being able to be flexible. So as a mum, it can get a bit frustrating when you have to explain to an employer, I can't come in because my kid's got chicken pox or whatever the case may be. And if you're a carer or a parent, you know that basically nursery is a petri dish and school is basically a petri dish. It gets better as they get older, but especially in those early years as they're building their immune system, they go down with colds a lot. And if you don't have an employer that necessarily understands that, it can make it look as if you're just making excuses. So for me, one of the things that really inspired me to start in business was, one, I wanted to be able to be flexible when it came to childcare, and you know, being around for my children. So one of the things that I pride myself on is, even if I'm working, my children come home to see me. You know, I'm not out working, I'm actually in my home. And I know that that's a luxury and that's a privilege, and I couldn't do that without the support of my family, particularly my mum, because that's very much embedded in the fabric of how I do business. So really lucky to have that. But also it's a privilege because I'm allowed to work on projects that I'm passionate about. So there's never been a role that I've taken that I haven't looked at and thought, okay, actually, is this going to make me happy on a day-to-day basis? Particularly when it's a little bit harder. Like, is the work that I'm doing having an impact on a wider community that I care about? And I've worked across a lot of different industries, education, housing. So to me, my passion is about people. So as long as I'm supporting people, I'm happy. And being able to do that with TGRG, whether I'm supporting an individual in building their career or whether I'm working within an organisation to help them, you know, help many, if it's getting them access to the information they need to live better lives, if it is, you know, working with teachers to introduce new curriculums, those things all appeal to my core values. So those are the things that have really inspired me to start my business. The next question is, what book or books have had the biggest impact on your entrepreneurial journey? Without a doubt, The Art of Nonconformity by Chris Guillebeau. Now, I'm really sorry if I've messed up your name, Chris, but I remember I'd started my first business and it had been a real struggle. Didn't really have the infrastructure that I do now, the knowledge that I do now. So it felt like a bit of a failure. I'd gone back to work thinking, actually, do you know what? I'm ready to work in an environment again, learn from other people again. I needed to take a break from running a business. And what happened was, as I was doing a contract that I'd been in for a while, I started getting these thoughts of, actually, I want to be self-employed. And a lot of different thoughts came into my head, and I just thought, these are crazy. Like, no normal person who's got responsibilities, a mortgage, who's got a kid, is thinking these thoughts about chucking that in and actually starting a business. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And I can't even remember how I came across this book. You know, everything happens for a reason. And this book came to me and I read it and I just felt so much peace, because I just realized, oh, I'm not weird and I'm not crazy. And actually, you know, it is okay to be entrepreneurial. Not, you know, it's not unusual not to want to be doing a 9 to 5 every day. So it really changed the trajectory of the way that I thought about business. And it was a real comfort to me. So that was a really, really important book for me. The next question is, how do you stay motivated during challenging times in business? It is hard. It is really, really hard, especially when, you know, your pipeline in terms of your flow of clients might not be as fluid as you want it to be. And I wrote this kind of manifesto stroke reminder as to why it is that I started in business in the first place. My key thing is, one, being able to be around for my children. You know, like I said, that's a massive privilege, and that's something that's really important to me. to be able to, earn more than a salary. And that's the thing with entrepreneurship, with business. When you get it right, it's the sort of thing where it's like actually your potential to earn is limitless. So that's what I wanted. I wanted a limitless life. I wanted to be able to have fluidity in what I did, work on projects that I was passionate about, work for people that I believed in. So yeah, those are the kind of cool things that made me think, actually, this is why I want to start in business. And this is what reminds me as to, why I stay in business, because of the fact that there's a lot of, it allows me to live a life that I value and I treasure. So onto a life question. What is the one piece of life advice you'd give to your younger self? Now, I give this to anybody around me, because I think that, I don't know if it's a British sensibility thing. I don't know if it's an African and Caribbean thing where we're taught that we should respect hierarchy. And sometimes that level of respect means that we're a little bit afraid of speaking up for ourselves or challenging. And for me, actually, I think that there is a difference between being direct and being rude. To me, being direct is being clear, being factual. So for example, if someone came to me and said the sky was green, I'd say, well, actually the sky is blue, and it's because of this whole system and water droplets and all that kind of stuff. That's facts. And I think there is a tone as well in being direct. So, just being mindful of how you share that information. So instead of being like, well, actually, just saying, well, another perspective is the sky is blue. And I think tone can make all the difference. Whilst being rude, I would put that down to being personal, emotional. Those things fuel the feedback that you're giving, and I think that can come across rude. And it's not an easy skill to learn. And to be honest, it was something I definitely didn't have in my 20s. I definitely do now have it in my 40s, and it's reinforced for me by when other people remind me that if there's something that I'm not happy with, I will say something. But I'm also a believer in you get more with honey than you do vinegar. So tone's really important, but it's also really important to be true to yourself. And if someone comes back to you and says, well, actually, I still believe the sky is green, then your duty is that you've done as much as you can. You can at least point a horse to water, and they don't necessarily have to drink it. But the key thing is that you have spoken up when it mattered. And I think that's a valuable piece of advice. The next question. How has your approach to life changed as you've gotten older? I think when I was a lot younger, particularly before having kids, I felt like there was value in being nice to everybody. And there still is. I don't purposefully go out my way to aggravate people. But I think there is a difference between being nice and being a people pleaser. And if I'm honest, a lot of that was about people pleasing. If I could do the best possible job for my manager and they were happy with me, then that was the validation that I needed. However, what I have learnt is that actually not all managers are built the same. And you shouldn't necessarily work in a way that's going to be to the detriment of yourself. So as I've gotten older, I'm clearer about what it is that I want. I don't always get it right. But it is important that I give myself that opportunity. I give myself grace. It was very easy all the time to punish myself in my head, my inner voice, and say, oh, well, you did that wrong, or you could have done that better, or, why aren't you here when you should be here in your career journey, or whatever. And I realised actually nothing before its time. And also, what is meant for you will never pass you, which is one of my favorite, one of my clients' favorite phrases to use as well. And it's just very true. I think I am learning to trust myself more, trust my ability, trust my skill set, and enjoy those moments where I'm able to deliver something that seemed impossible. So trusting that actually I've got my back, I've got my team's back. So I think it's a lot more self-full, my life I call it, where I am giving myself grace. I am making sure that I validate me. That doesn't have to come from anybody else. So yeah, I think, and I hope that actually if any of you are watching this who are younger, that you have the opportunity to embrace that message quite early. I wish I'd had that a lot earlier on, and I probably would have made some different decisions. But again, everything works out the way it's supposed to. The other thing that I would recommend in terms of a book for an approach to life is a book called The 4 Agreements by a writer called Don Miguel Ruiz. And I've loved this book. It's one of my staple books, just like The Art of Nonconformity. And the 4 agreements are: don't take anything personally, be impeccable with your word, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. And one of the things I've loved about that book is that it talks about sometimes when people do things, it's not even sometimes, when people do things, it's not about you. They are the protagonist movie star in their own movie that they're producing, and sometimes when they react to things, it's because of some of the characters in their lives, some of the experiences that they're having, and sometimes we can take that personally when they react or they make certain decisions. And I think this book is critical in understanding, actually, we already know not everything's about us, but I think it reinforces that and also gives us some really positive standards to kind of benchmarks to kind of work to throughout life. So I think it's a really useful book. Motherhood. How do you juggle motherhood and running a business? It's not easy. It's not easy. And it's a bit like the advice that I give new mums. So things like, when your baby's resting, you rest. When you're doing housework and you need to make a phone call, put a hands-free in. It's just practical advice I think I can offer you when it comes to balancing the business and the bottle. And that's the baby bottle. So I would say use your support networks if you have them. I'm really, really lucky to have my mum be a support, and also my son's dad gets involved with both my boys, so I'm really lucky to have that embedded support. Give yourself grace. That's really, really important, because you're not going to be able to be everywhere at any given time. I think as well, talking to your kids, just letting them know when they're at a point they can understand, mum's working. Mummy guilt is useless. Just don't even get into that. It is not going to help you propel forward. It's great to kind of keep you aware about, am I spending too much time here? Maybe I need to carve out time here for the kids. Having a routine in place is really useful, but don't succumb to it. It's a waste of energy. And as someone said the other day, it's like, the things you worry about, by giving them that energy, it's almost like you're worshipping it. And it's just not necessary. It is what it is. The thing with us as women is that we will accommodate and we will adapt and pivot and deliver irrespective of the circumstances that we're in. So again, it's about trusting yourself that you will do that for the benefit of your kids. You're not always going to get it right, but you're human, and that's an important thing to kind of hold on to. How do you involve your children in your work, if at all? So my son is very much into graphic design, loves using things like Canva. So the ways that I get him involved is he loves producing music, so I might get him to produce music for something, or get him to design something, and even just teaching him life skills. I think it's really important. He's 15 and about to go into sixth form. So one of the things that I've really loved about our time together is being able to show him how some of the skills that I have built in my business apply to his application process for sixth form, whether that is setting up diary appointments for when the open days are. It's so interesting how a lot of our young people, because they're not necessarily exposed to those skills, don't actually know how to do them. And then it's frustrating for people when they get in the workplace when they say book a diary appointment and they can't. And that adds a layer of unnecessary embarrassment. Do you know what I mean? So I would always say, like, if there is a skill set that you have that your children can get involved, they can learn, explain things to them. For example, this isn't necessarily work related, but I got into stocks and shares, and they were learning stocks and shares at school. So just talking to him about things like compound interest and dividends and applying it to real life. And one of the things that I'm really proud of between my son and his dad is the fact that, his dad is employed, I'm self-employed, and he gets to see the best of both worlds in terms of actually you can have success in whatever arena that you choose. So yeah, whenever I can get him involved, he was a runner on set for one of my client photo shoots. So whenever I can get him involved, I think it's important to do that. And you're passing on not only life skills, but part of your legacy. So, one of my proudest moments was when my son was asking me, did I have a PNG so he could design something? And I just thought, oh, you're my son. And they pick up things. So yeah, always cultivate any interest. And I think as well, that kind of helps with the mummy guilt thing. So when they know, actually they can see aspects of the business and they know that you're doing it not just for you or your clients, but for them, then it takes on a different angle at that point. So yeah, I think those are all the questions for now. If there are any questions that you have, maybe about what it's like to start a business, where you would start, just drop me a line, send me an email, and I will answer those questions for you. So until next time, speak soon.